What's up, guys? This is Wenzes. Welcome back to my channel where we talk about personal development for INFJs and how to create an epic life on your terms. We are going back to the classics. Today we're talking about the INFJ door slam, and we're talking in particular about the pros and cons of doing the INFJ door slam. For the ones of you who don't know what the INFJ door slam is all about, it's something that is very well known in the INFJ community. It happens when an INFJ has been pushed to the edge. You know, you've been giving more and more of yourself, wanting to help the other person, trying to be open, and you're not getting the respect back that you deserve. And at some point, you just say that's enough and you bounce. You close the door, you don't even say bye. People understand that you've had the power all along and you just didn't want to use it. And that unravels a lot of negative emotions within the other person and within you. So today we're going to talk about how to navigate this whole concept, if it's something you should do or you shouldn't do, and what my personal approach is to this topic. Before we get started, I want to remind you that the masterclass is on final sale. I think there are like a couple of days left, maybe a week. So use that because afterwards we're not going to have access to that program anymore. So what are the pros of the INFJ door slam? First, let me say I believe that if you've gotten to a point where it's necessary to use the INFJ door slam, please do so. In that scenario, in my opinion, there are barely any cons to it. So let's say you've met somebody and you want that person to recognize that you're being a good person, that you're trying your best, that you want the other one to succeed, whatever it is, what kind of positive intentions you have in that situation. And so you put yourself out there, you become more vulnerable. You want that other person to understand by themselves what you got to offer. You don't want to be the one who says, okay, I demand this, because then it's not authentic, right? That's what happens in so many of our minds, and that's why so many of us get to this point where we have to use the INFJ door slam. I know I've been to that point many times in the past, but I haven't used the INFJ door slams for years now because of the steps I take, so I never get to that point. But I really want you to understand it is important. If you get to that point, don't put yourself in a situation where you say, I'm going to show my other cheek, I'm going to just turn around and keep on getting slapped, because no matter how strong you are, and we all know INFJs are very strong mentally. We can take a lot of things. We can survive a lot of things going on. That's why we're called the martyrs, because we can see how other people are struggling and we feel we can be the ones who can take that burden away from them because we can take more. It's one of the things that we're so proud of, and it's particularly something in our community that seems like a badge of honor. You know, I can take this pain, I can take this pain away from you, and that's how we define ourselves. But it has its downsides as well, because the longer you're not doing the INFJ door slam, the more you allow that other person to take and to take because you want them to understand it by themselves, the less energy you have. And this was something I needed to understand the hard way. You will get to a point where yes, you can fight back. The more you hold yourself back, because this is what the INFJ door slam is all about in the beginning, right before you get to that point, it is hollowing yourself out, allowing the other person to become as big as they can be through their personality, so you understand what they're about, you absorb their energy, you want to be their guiding angel, so to say, and you do that by understanding them so deeply. The problem with this whole thing is that people like that, the people that you want to help, they're not able to see what you have to offer. They're not able to see your strength. They're not able to see that you're sacrificing for them. And we very often believe we're the reason for it. We're not being kind enough. We're not being strong enough. We're not being supportive enough. Whatever kind of story we tell ourselves. So we give even more. We give even more. And by doing that, that other person respects you less and less. Not because they're a bad person to begin with, but because we as humans, and this is something, no matter what kind of personality type you are, we treat people how they treat themselves. That is a common law. law. If you show up as somebody who respects her or himself, you will see that people are much more likely to do the same. Even the people who have no understanding of your thinking, they respect you enough to go out of your way. Or they see that no matter what they throw towards you, you're not going to reply. There's not going to be a communication. So a lot of tension is avoided to begin with. But if you yourself are saying, I need you to see my value, I'm not going to demand it, because again, the same thought process that we talked in the beginning. If you're at a point where you say, I want that other person to see my value without me being the one who chooses me, without me being the one who demands it, because then it's authentic, right? There's a logic to this thought process, but it backfires every single time. That person cannot see your value because you are not seeing it for yourself. Because the moment you decide that you are worthy, it doesn't matter if the other person chooses you or not. You already choose yourself, meaning you don't neglect your personal needs and desires for others. You know that the best way to help others is by shining and showing them that they can shine too. That it's not necessary for you to neglect yourself in order for others to feel good. Because people look at what you do, not what you say. So if you tell somebody, believe in yourself, you deserve to put yourself first, but they see that you're not doing the same, that you're neglecting yourself, that you're first off thinking about the other person than your own well-being, because you think, well, but I can take it, I'm strong, I can do both of that. That's the thought process we have at this point. They are not going to be able to see that you have this value that you want them to see. The only way they can see this is if you demand it, and you demand it from absolutely everybody. You say, I choose myself, I give myself that respect, and everybody who can't see that doesn't belong in my life. So back to our thoughts of the pros and the cons. If you've gotten to this point where that person hasn't been able to see your value because you haven't shown it, because you still think, I'm not worthy, because the moment you feel worthy, you demand it to begin with by default. You don't care if others see it or not. And it sounds so easy, but we all know it's not. It's not something that 95% of all people are really great at, and you're not. Almost all people struggle with this, INFJ or not. So this is something that will happen very often. And in most cases, it will take a real big hit for you to say, that's enough. Now I have to choose myself. And I really hope you don't have to go that far in order to make that transition. So believe me, in most cases, it'll be healthy for you to do the INFJ door slam because you haven't recognized how you've gotten yourself to that position. I've gotten myself in that position. I still surprise myself when from time to time I recognize that certain people did have an effect on me that I thought I was above. It happens. And with every step of self-growth that you take, you'll recognize there's still one more to go. So remember, if you've gotten to this point, do the INFJ door slam and do it sooner rather than later. Because the sooner you do it, the less intense it has to be, the less it's going to hurt the other person, and the less it's going to hurt you. Because I've never met somebody who's done the INFJ door slam, it didn't feel like it hurt themselves as well. Because it meant shutting the door towards somebody that you had really positive emotions towards. We are only put in this position of slamming the door into somebody's face like this if that person has meant a lot to us. So that process in itself, it is very hurtful, but it is necessary. It is the last resort. So please don't let this go too far. And what I've learned now is that the sooner you are able to tell that person, you cannot do this with me, and your actions really show that. So it's not just about somebody's flaky with you and you say, I'm not going to accept your flakiness, but there are no consequences. That's not real progress in that area. What needs to happen is for you to say, I'm not going to accept your flakiness, so I'm out. Like, do that little INFJ door slam. And then when a person wants to be in your life again, they have to do more than before in order for you to be back as involved as you were. You're never going to give up so much of yourself for that little return. Now that we have established what the pros are, let's talk about the cons. Because as I just mentioned, it is very hurtful, and it's not something that you have to continuously do in order to feel okay with yourself. I have learned that the more INFJ door slams I have to do, the less I'm really able to gain more and more energy. Getting to a place where you are in a position where you have to do that, then of course do it, please do it. But I don't want you to get to that position. The worst case scenario is for you to get to a position where the INFJ door slam is necessary and you're not doing it. The second best one is for you to get to a position where the INFJ door slam is necessary and you do it hard, and you let the other person know what you're about. And the best case scenario is that you never let it get this far. And in order to do that, you have to decide that you're worth it. And with that decision, you're never going to put yourself back in a position where you allow the other person to define what you're worth and what you're not. And most INFJs that you will talk to, they will say, but I'm not like that. I respect myself. I don't wait for others to give me my recognition. I believe in myself. I used to say that too. And to this day, I'm not that naive to believe that I am completely healed and that I'm full of self-love and there are no places where I could work on myself. I have done this process often enough to know that I'm blind to my own shortcomings. And if you approach it that way, it helps you to get to the next level without pain, without having to sacrifice so much. See, personal growth doesn't have to be all about pain. I used to be in so much pain. I used to live in such intense negativity, and I felt like that was necessary. Now I was able to grow the last years, to get beyond myself, to help more people, to get more excited about life, and to barely ever get in positions where I get triggered by people. And I got this way because I'm open and willing to see that of course I'm being triggered by other people. Of course there are going to be situations where another person's opinion matters to me and that I'm not aware of it. Because next time after you had an argument or some person said something to you that triggered you, afterwards, when you're sitting at home and you're going through that conversation and you start answering that person in your head or whatever it is, when this conversation takes time in your mind, you already know this has an effect on you. And it's not about the other person. That's the interesting part. If that other person would have said something that didn't trigger you at all, you wouldn't have thought about it. So let's say that other person would have said to you, oh, why do you have brown hair? That's so uncool. Why aren't you blonde? You wouldn't have cared. You really wouldn't have cared, because why would you? It is not something that you struggle with. It's not something that ever bothered you. You know, the story goes on and on. This is of course just an example. But if that other person says something to you that triggers that you're not being kind enough, or that you're being too secretive, or that you're being too selfish, if that conversation triggers that in you, then it's because you yourself have doubts about this aspect of yourself. And that knowledge in itself will help you to get to the next level. Because once you know that, and you know it's not about the other person, you get to decide, how would this version of me react that was confident in this area? If I didn't believe I was selfish, then I probably would stand up more for myself. Because if I'm fearful that I'm being too selfish, I give too much of myself. And once you recognize this, you know, okay, the version of me who doesn't believe that she or he is selfish, that person would stand up more for themselves. It hurts me, it makes me uncomfortable, but I will do it now. And I will do it now before a door slam is necessary. Because I still believe that there is a chance that this relationship could get better. If you're waiting until the point of no return, which the door slam is, you are already saying this relationship doesn't have a future. The only way this relationship could have a future is if that person by themselves gets who I am. And that in itself, I don't think it has ever happened, because that person cannot know who you are unless you show it to them. There is just no way. It's not the other person's fault. Even if that person was an INFJ and was all intuitive and could see so much about you, how could they if you never show them where your boundaries are? How is that person supposed to know what hurts you, what bothers you, who you are about, if all of those emotions keep staying within you? You can be the most intuitive person. If the other one doesn't give you any clues, there's nothing you can base this on. All the people that you have such hunches about, that you know so much about, you get to absorb part of their personality because of the things they show you. So if you know from now on, I'm going to show when that person is stepping on my boundaries. I'm not afraid of that. I understand that real vulnerability is showing boundaries and not being the one who keeps on putting themselves down for the other one to understand what you have to offer. That is the easy way out, and it's just a short way thinking. The long-term thinking is to understand that we will create a new dynamic between those two people. And this dynamic will happen by you showing boundaries, that other person then making compromises on their behavior and changing the dynamic. In order to have a healthy dynamic that is based on you being your most self, you being your happiest version of yourself, and the other person being the same way, you continuously have to show each other when boundaries are being crossed, you compromise, and you get to a better end result. I really hope that helped you to understand what the INFJ door slam is about, what the pros are if you've gotten to the position where a door slam is necessary, and what the cons are in order not to even get it that far. If you want to know more about this topic, I have a couple more videos on it. Check them out. Remember, the masterclass is on its final sale. It's like one more week, and then I start again with coaching, and we're going to improve the bootcamp this year as well. Like always, guys, I wish you a wonderful day, a great week, and I talk to you next time. Bye.